Hi everyone, it's Jessica. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're working on sourdough starter, so let's get started. We're on day one of our sourdough starter. I have my glass jar here. I like to use a glass jar. I use these ones, they're called Weck jars, and this is, a roughly 4-cup jar. These jars are actually meant for preserving. They have a rubber gasket and like a little clip so you can actually preserve foods in them. When I'm using it for sourdough, I just take that rubber gasket and clip off and just use it as the glass lid and the jar. For the first day of the starter, I'm using whole wheat. You could either use whole wheat, rye, or like a pumpernickle flour. These kinds of flours have the most like wild yeast in them, and it's the easiest to capture from. So we always start with one of those on day one. But after day one, we can switch to a regular all-purpose flour. You can do this in 2 different increments. I am going to be doing the smaller increment. I always do the smaller increment when I'm starting sourdough because it means like less discard. And then once I get to the final day and I have a really bubbly active starter, I can feed it more and more and make the amount more. So I am starting with a 1/2 cup of whole wheat flour. This is a 1/4 and another 1/4. And then I am going to be mixing in a 1/4 cup of water. And that's just regular, cool to room temperature water. And then I just use a spatula to get it going. Now, the other measurement you could use is 1 cup of flour to a 1/2 cup of water. So it's the same ratio. I'm just cutting it in half, a 1/2 cup of flour to a 1/4 cup of water. Now, on the first day, sometimes it needs like a tablespoon more of water, but I always mix it and see. So I've just mixed it. See how thick and stiff that is? I'm gonna add just about a tablespoon more of water. And when I stir that, it gets a little bit more goopy and liquid. Hold on, I'll show you in 1 sec. That is what I'm looking for on the first day. So now we are going to set this aside. We're gonna wait 24 hours and then we'll feed it again. When I'm starting the sourdough, I often don't use the glass lid. I do use this all the time when I'm maintaining it. But when I'm starting it, I often just cover it with a towel. This towel's a little thick, so I'm gonna get a thinner one, but I'll just drape the towel over the top like that, and we'll come back in 24 hours and feed this again. Okay, we're back on day 2. I'm just gonna open my sourdough up and just give it a stir. We need to take 1/2 of this out. So if you want to measure, I usually just, eyeball it. So look, I push it all to one side. Can you see? I push it. And then I just like cut it in half. This is only going to work like on this day. It's thicker today because of the whole wheat flour. It won't always be this thick. It's usually more runny. So I'm just going to take that out. And now I have like 1/2 of what I started with. So I'm just gonna push that all down. And then we're going to add, I'm still doing the small measurements, so I'm gonna add a 1/2 cup of flour. And then my 1/4 cup of water. And then just stir this. And now it looks kind of gloopy, liquidy. And that's it. So we're gonna wait 24 hours and then we're gonna feed it again. So I'll see you in 24 hours. Okay, we're back here on day 3. I've been keeping my lid on top of the towel just to keep track of it. But this is what it looks like right now. There are some bubbles. If you smell it, it smells a little bit like sourdough. Just a little yet, not a ton. It's kind of this gloopy texture when I mix it. And just like yesterday, we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna take 1/2 of it away. It's not as thick as yesterday, so I can't like cut it and slip it out like I did. I poured about 1/2 of it out. And now I'm going to add my flour. I'm doing a 1/2 cup of all-purpose flour. And then we'll do a 1/4 cup of water. And then give it a really good stir. Here's what it looks like right now. Largely the same as it did this morning. But I think after today, we'll start getting just a little bit more activity. So we're gonna give this 24 hours now, and then we'll come back on day 4. Okay, it's day 4. Today we're going to start twice a day feedings. So I have some sourdough dried around the edges here. I'm gonna start with a new jar. I do this sometimes when the jar gets really dirty, and it just makes me feel better. So I'm gonna pour about half of this in, probably like that. And then I'm gonna add a half of a cup of flour and a 1/4 cup of water. And then we'll stir this. And I am going to do the same thing in about 12 hours. So tonight, before I go to bed, I will feed this again the exact same way. Here's what it looks like now after it's been stirred. And I'm just going to cover it back up. I think it's fine now to start using a lid. Sometimes in the beginning, like I said, I like to use the towel. It breathes more, and in the beginning, I feel like you kind of really need that, especially on the first day when it's all like whole wheat or rye or pumpernickle flour and water. I like to use a towel then, but now we're kind of getting further along, and I'm okay with just using the lid now. So that's it. I'm going to set it aside, and we'll come back in 12 hours and feed it again. Okay, today is day 5. Now, yesterday on day 4, I fed it twice. I didn't get to film the second feeding, but I did it exactly like the first, and I spaced them 12 hours apart. Now for day 5, we're going to repeat that same thing. So this is what my starter looks like before I stir it. You can see there are bubbles on top. When I smell it, it smells almost like sourdough, like very close, but not as sharp. It smells like a mix between what sourdough would smell like when it's ready and just flour and water. So like we're getting there, but we're not there yet. So I'm going to put in a 1/4 cup of water and a half a cup of flour. And today for day 5, we're going to do exactly what we did yesterday. So we're going to do 2 feedings spaced 12 hours apart. Okay, and we'll put the lid back on and come back in 12 hours and do that again. It's day 6, and I'm ready to feed my sourdough. Yesterday for day 5, I did the feeding in the morning that I shared, and then I did another one 12 hours later that I didn't record. So I just repeated the exact same thing in the morning and the night. And today on day 6, we're going to do that exact same thing again. And we're also going to do it on day 7. So right now I have my starter, I stir it. To me, this is almost ready. It could even be ready now, like anywhere between day 5 and 7, it could be ready to use. If it's not ready at day 7, you just keep repeating the twice a day feedings until it is ready. And what I judge to be ready, it's got bubbles on the top and it smells like sourdough. That is, the 2 measures that I kind of use. I know there's other ways, and you can put a lot more into it and look at a lot of different things. But basically, that is what I use. So I'm adding a 1/4 cup of water and a half a cup of flour. And then we'll stir it. Once it's all mixed in, then I'll just try to clean up the jar sides a little. And then shove that down to the bottom. And then we'll let this go for 12 hours, and I'll feed it in the evening tonight. Okay, so yesterday for day 6, I did a feeding in the morning, and 12 hours later, I did a feeding again. Now it's day 7, and I'm going to do my morning feeding. And today I'm also going to do a feeding in the morning and a feeding 12 hours later. And then, based on what I'm seeing in my sourdough, I'm ready to start using it. I'm changing to a new jar because my jar is getting a little bit messy and I like to have them somewhat clean. So I put in the new jar the 1/4 cup of water and the half a cup of flour. I'll just start to stir that. And then I'm going to pour in, I already poured off half of this starter, so I'm just going to pour in the rest of it to here. And then I'll just stir this to combine it really well. And based on what I'm seeing when I opened my starter this morning, there were bubbles all over the top of it. It smelled just like sourdough bread smells. And I feel like I'm ready. I feel like I could even use it today if I wanted, if I didn't feed it. If I just wanted to use this, got fed 12 hours ago, this could have been ready to use. I'm just going to go one more day and then I'm going to start using it. So I just fed it now. 12 hours later, I'm going to repeat the process. And then in the morning of day 8, I'll show you what it looks like and why I think it's ready to go. It's a day 8 and my sourdough starter is ready to use. So this is what the one that looks like that we have been working on together. See, there are lots of bubbles in it. It's like puffy and light. You can see the activity all the way around, those bubbles, the puffiness. There is signs that overnight, this mixture, which is here now, rose up and fell down. And also it smells just like sourdough bread. It's a good smell, but it's sharp and pungent. And now this is ready to use. Let me show you my existing starter that I've had for a long time. I also fed this one last night. It also has bubbles on top and it's really fluffy and light. I've moved it around quite a bit, so you can't really see the sides anymore on this one, but it has a strong, sharp, pungent smell, just like the other one, sourdough. And I baked bread with this recently, and I know that this is a good active starter. So based on my knowledge of what the starter should look like, I think this one is ready. Now, if you've never made it before, that's totally okay. You're just gonna follow the process blindly. Just keep doing the feedings. For the first 3 days, we're feeding once every 24 hours. And from day 4 through day 7, we're feeding twice a day every 12 hours. If your starter doesn't smell like sourdough and doesn't have bubbles, doesn't look like it rose up and fell, keep feeding it. Do a day 8 where you feed every 12 hours. At some point, you will have this. If the sourdough smells bad, it doesn't smell like sourdough bread should smell. I've had that happen before. Probably some kind of contamination got in there and something else is growing in it besides the things you want to grow. When it gets to that point, I usually just throw it away and start over. It's okay to make a mistake in this process. It's okay to have to repeat it and try again. The first sourdough starter I ever made worked really well. I had tried to start some after that, and I've had issues there too. I've had one where something else got in it and it smelled so bad. Every time I smelled the jar, I was like, oh God, that's horrible. I ended up just throwing it away and starting over. So don't get discouraged if it doesn't work the first time for you. That's perfectly reasonable. It happens. Things happen. Just try again. Once you have it going and it's ready to use, it's an active starter, which is what I have now. What I usually do is I feed it. So this morning I'll feed it and then I usually just put it in the fridge. When I put it in the fridge, I only feed it once a week or if I'm gonna need it at a certain time. So for example, I typically make my bread on Sunday most often. So Saturday night, I'll take it out of the fridge. I'll pour half off. I'll usually make something with that because it's a good active discard now. And then I will feed the starter. If I'm making a lot of things, I'll feed it the 1 cup of flour and the half a cup of water. If I'm only making one thing and I don't need a bunch, then I'll just feed it the half a cup of flour, 1/4 cup of water like we were doing when we were getting it started. And then if I don't need that any other time throughout the week, then I'll just maintain that Saturday nights I'll feed this starter. And then if I am following that process where I take it out Saturday night, I feed it, I leave it on the counter until Sunday, and then Sunday I use it. After I'm finished using it, I feed it again and put it back in the fridge if I'm finished, where it stays until Saturday without me having to do anything. If I want to make bread or something with a sourdough other times, then what I do is the night before I need it, I take it out, I take half off, and I feed it. And then I would use it the next day. After I use it, I feed what's left and then I put it back in the fridge. So that's the process that I follow now. And it makes it really easy because you're not overwhelmed with the amount of discard. You're not having discard every single day if you don't want discard every single day. And you're not having to feel like you have to use that up so you're not wasting it. And also the starter is always there for whenever I need. I can just pull it out, feed it ahead of time, and then use it. So I hope this is helpful. It is an extremely laid back approach, and sometimes I just feel like that's what I need, so maybe others need that too. If this method is too laid back for you, you can just search how to make a sourdough starter on YouTube, and like literally hundreds of videos will come up. You don't have to follow this one if it's not for you. But if you're really wanting to get into it now, I just encourage you to try this way. And if you've tried other ways before and never had success, maybe give this way a try. So if you have any questions, just let me know in the comments. And if not, I'll see you back here real soon. Thanks for following along.